Learn from your elders. Learn from the seniors in your life. They are a wealth of information, and learn from them.
This podcast is brought to you by ISU Corp. Are you having trouble with your software projects? Is there a project that's taking too long or a technology you can't handle? We can help. We are ISU Corp, experts in custom software since 2005. With almost 20 years of experience, we can solve any technical problem from new businesses to satellite software. We've done it all. Let us turn your ideas into reality. Learn more about how we can help by visiting us at www.isucorp.ca. Your solution starts here.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders in Tech, where we're shining the light on leaders that are changing their organizations by the technologies they are building through leadership and their teams. Today we have with us David. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David, very much. Happy to join you today.
We have a beautiful name, don't we? Talking
about
that,
David's here as well, so we're getting used to a lot of us.
Exactly. Can you please tell me your full name, though? Where do you work and what do you do for a living?
Sure. The name is David Finkelstein. I am the Chief Information Officer at RiverSpring Living. RiverSpring Living is a not-for-profit healthcare provider based in the Bronx, New York. We own and operate skilled nursing facilities, assisted living facilities, independent living facilities, home healthcare agencies, and managed care organizations. And we serve approximately about 2,500 employees, and now this year 107 years old, so it's a very old rooted organization in New York City.
How many years? Over 100 years old?
107 years, yes.
That's remarkable. Most businesses go out of business in 2 years.
That's correct. So we started in Harlem, New York as a orphanage for colored people, moved to the Bronx in the 1950s with a not-for-profit mission, originally as a faith-based Jewish organization, but we've expanded our organization and we service all races, all creeds, all colors, mostly those people without insurance on the Medicaid and Medicare rolls, using government assistance. But our goal is to really treat the seniors that are in the marketplace and make their lives as best as we can.
That is beautiful, David. And I am actually a man of faith. I'm Christian, and it's beautiful to know that a Jewish organization started this blessed business. Because for me, everything is a business. Even if it's not for profit, you still have to make money to deliver your valued service, right?
No margin, no mission.
Right. So, and having the fact that you expanded it to all religions and all races is beautiful, because that's the foundation of what we believe. Love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Exactly.
That's the second greatest commandment after loving Yahweh with all your heart, all your might, and all your soul. So it's a blessing to have you. Thank you for explaining to us where the organization comes from. And I know this is a technology podcast, and we'll get to that in a minute. But it's such a blessing to work for a company like that, isn't it? How do you feel like? How is your fulfillment leading the tech team that provides these services to these people in need?
I guess the best way to explain it is what we went through during COVID. Because when we go through COVID, we had to change on a dime from a technology perspective, knowing that the people that we serve, many of them live with us. This is their homes. They live in our nursing home, they live in our assisted living, and they were shut off from the rest of the world. Department of Health, with a good reason, did not allow visitation. So we couldn't have family members see their parents and their loved ones. So we had to really step up the technology services in order to facilitate that. So we begged, borrowed, stole every single iPad and mobile device that we could. We created FaceTime meetings with all the residents and their family members so that we can have them interact with their family. We supported the staff by creating webcams and using Zoom and GoToMeeting and Teams so that they can get their work done at the same time. And we all rallied together as a as a big giant community to help each other get through this pandemic. At certain points in time, we had a number of deaths in the organization. We had a building that was empty and we were going to repurpose it for other purposes. And in partnership with the local hospital, we reopened that building as a COVID-only building for those people that were in the hospital but really didn't need hospital care, but was still positive with COVID. We took those patients out of the hospital to free up hospital beds, and we treated them until they were able to go home on their own. So we really partnership with the community and with the hospital systems to make the best out of a difficult situation.
And within a pressure of time, right? And
absolutely. And one of the areas that we promoted during that time, we call it Hands on Hudson, because we're right near the Hudson River, is that all of the non-clinical staff donate 1 to 2 hours of time during their week to be up on the floors, to befriend the resident, to help the food service people serve breakfast, lunch, or dinner, to help people transport from one area of the building. And that has continued even after COVID, because we feel that we learn so much from interacting with the patients that we serve, and we get enrichment by being part of their lives, learning about their history and their lives, and it helps us really help the mission proceed.
And David, that's a beautiful thing that happened from a tragedy, especially for IT people. When you're behind a desk, you're doing networking, or you're doing programming, or you're doing whatever it is that you're doing behind a computer, you get isolated from the human factor. When you send technology people to live where the action happens, their life changes. That's what happened to me. Like I was hired to lead a software team for a national organization. We had many laboratories across Canada. And one of the biggest implementations we did, I decided to go down with my team to the floor where the lab testing was happening, where all the processing was happening. And it was a dramatic change for the deployment of the software that we were building, because we noticed all the problems that people were having. We noticed how they were interacting. We noticed that if we move a button 2 inches to the right, we'll save them 10 seconds, which amalgamate to 3 hours at the end of the week.
Absolutely. User experience testing and looking over the shoulder of the end users allows you to have the developers and the support people have the empathy of the end users and be in their shoes and understand what they're all about.
It's fantastic, David. And also, something that I want to point is that when a great crisis hits, always there is heroes that rises to the occasion. And most of these heroes, nobody knows them, and they will never be known. So kudos to you and your team for doing this, because you were risking your lives implementing technology physically. You're going to the site, you're going there, like, of course you were considered essential worker, but you were actually risking your life going to a place where you could be infected, where people could have died, by deploying the life-saving equipment that you were giving, right?
Exactly.
Amazing. Amazing. Now, David, to have a leadership like that takes time, experience, trials, and tribulations. So I want to go back to the past. Tell me, how did you get started in IT? Did you go to university for computer science?
David, you told me this podcast was going to be about 30 to 45 minutes. I have 3 hours to tell my story. That wouldn't get far back. No, I kid. So when I was exiting high school, I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do, like many people. Grandpa says you should be a doctor. I was interested in sciences, interested in math, was very into photography. I actually worked local newspapers doing photography and had a darkroom at home and developed the pictures to put in the newspapers of local events and sport events, worked for the school newspaper, worked for the school sports department. So I convinced myself that Grandpa wants me to be a doctor, let's go down that path. So I went to the University of Rochester as a pre-med student the first year. After one semester, I got very disillusioned. People were committing suicide because they didn't have a 4.0 grade point average. People were sabotaging other people's chemistry labs so that they can get ahead. And I felt that this really wasn't my cup of tea for the rest of my life. And I was more interested in business. Computers were starting to be coming of age. It was the late 70s, early 80s. The personal computer was just about coming out and being used. So I switched gears and I went into business and computers. Unfortunately, the University of Rochester didn't have any undergraduate degrees in business or computers. So what I decided to do is spent the second half of the first year and all of the second year taking graduate schools of management, business, and computer courses, just because I was interested in them. I didn't want to waste my time at the college, and learned a lot. We, used the local telephone company Timeshare, their IBM 360 mainframe, learned programming, learned Fortran and Minitab and COBOL and all those languages, and was very interested in that. I knew it wasn't going to lead to a degree, so I stayed there for 2 years. When I came back home after the second summer, I ended up getting a summer job at a local company that did microfilm, of all things. So they provided microfilm services to a lot of banks and a lot of brokerage houses to microfilm maybe all the bank statements and all the bonds and stocks, the bearer bonds and stocks, in order to preserve them in case there were problems with them. And I started running their accounting department. I got a reference from a mutual friend who got me in there. I learned how to do payroll. I learned how to do accounts payable. I learned how to do general ledger, all manual on a piece of ledger paper.
Manual.
So, got to be a better way to do this. Right? Able to, at that time, bought them an Apple IIe computer with 243K floppy drives, the separate card that had to go in there to change a 40-column display to an 80-column display, and put an accounting system in to help them do payroll, help them do accounting, help them do billing. They sent me out to their California office for a week to help their office get modernized. That week turned into 9 months living out in Los Angeles. When I came back, and all this says, all right, I guess I put the college career on hold as we're doing all this. Came back to New York. They had another company, another customer of theirs that was microfilming. The state of Massachusetts was microfilming all their abandoned property records. When you have a bank or a company that has information or property that gets that doesn't get touched for a couple of years, must be turned over to the state. The state had all these bank books and all this information, so they hired our microfilm company to microfilm all of these pieces of information. Well, guess what? If we have thousands of rolls of microfilm, how are we going to find some specific area? So I wrote in Pascal a database management system to restore and record that Mary Smith's bank book is in roll 753, frame 5,280 of this. We had a key bunch people. We sat there and keyed it all on an Apple IIe with floppy drives and built something on that was before DBase, before all these database programs, before SQL. I'm sitting there writing bubble sorts on how to sort two files to make it in alphabetical order. So that was really where I got my my interest in computers and IT. So after a year or two of that, I said I have to promise myself, I promised my family, you have to finish college. So I went to a local college, Hofstra University in Long Island, and got my bachelor's of business and computer information systems. So I finally got my degree. It was all in business and computers. It wasn't in medicine, but then things turned back to healthcare again. The first job I got there was a company that provided medical record software and billing software for the long-term care industry. So
how long was this?
This was 1984, 1985.
They already had clinical records on electronic, eh? Because I thought this medical clinical records was a revolution from the 2000s.
Well, this was very rudimentary. It was on the IBM System 34, System 36.
Wow.
And eventually we were one of the first AS400 vendors out in the marketplace. So we were flying around the country. I originally started with the customer service team, training facilities on how to do billing, how to set up their general ledger, how to set up their accounting systems, how to set up their clinical documentation systems on a green screen IBM AS400 across the country. And that's really where my blend of healthcare and technology came together. After that company in, I think it was 1992, 1993, decided to sell off their business to one of their customers. They relocated the business up to Burlington, Vermont. The 25 of us that were working there chose not to relocate. And I ended up starting to work for one of their customers, which happens to be a very similar organization that I'm at right now down in Greenwich Village in Manhattan, that had nursing homes, that had assisted living, and had home care. And I became their IT director. So I started really their journey into automating their organization. They had this system's billing and medical record system. They didn't have a network. They had a bunch of green screens, and I learned my way through that, moving from IT director to manager of the IT to the chief information officer over 17 years of my career there at that organization.
David, isn't that amazing that all things work together for good?
Yes.
I mean, little did you know that learning how to do accounting without having any accounting schooling was going to help you dramatically for your IT career,
yes.
Isn't it? You know, we have very similar touch points in our experience in our life. The first computer that I ever touched in my life was an Apple IIe. My dad bought it in the 80s. He brought it home and he said, this computer is super expensive and you're not allowed to touch it. I was a teenager back then. And he put a lock on it, like he had it in a cage. But he made sure I knew where he left the key. So
he wanted to make sure.
Trick with me to like entice me to play with the computer. And of course, when he left for work, I will always, try to figure it out. And I figured it out. And the first language where I wrote my first computer program was in Pascal, in a number screen.
It's a very parallel career.
That's why I loved it. You know what I did? I simulated a bank machine. This is like 1888. And I actually wrote this software for a bank machine where it will actually dispense money and it will give you change and will tell you when it ran out of currency. And, I fell in love with Pascal so much that when I started my professional career, I realized that as a developer, now I'm talking 1995, 1996, client server was the big thing back then, but I was still in love with the language, the Pascal language. So I thought maybe there is something object-oriented on Pascal. So I discovered Delphi. So I kept writing software in Pascal, object Pascal, for another 10 years after that, until C# came along with Microsoft. And it looked like Pascal too, by the way, because if you look at C#, they stole a bit from Java, a bit from Pascal. Like they just got the best out of all these traditional languages, and I just fell in love with C#.
After my original experience with Pascal, and then for the software company, everything was in RPG2 and RPG3 and CL and OCL. I never wanted to go back to programming. It was interesting. It's good to have that background and that understanding. But it was I couldn't sit there behind a desk and code for hours on end. It wasn't something in my DNA. I had to get out there with the customers. That's why I was in the customer service side and the support side. And it felt better to me to be out there as part of the business as opposed to within the IT department.
It was your calling, right, David? For me, RPG2 almost kills my programming desires because it was so horrible. And I had to do it on AS400, I remember. But this is for college. I was going through college. So I had 2 college careers. The first one back home in Guatemala, where I learned all these mainframe languages. And then in Canada, I got remodernized in 1993, and I did another college career here. But I remember when I had to write RPG2. And then it's funny because I was looking for a job after I graduated back home, and that the only job that I could find was an RPG2 coder's job to write accounting software, and I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Don't blame you. Don't blame you.
When was the first time that somebody trusted you with leading a team?
Yeah, so this comes during the 17 years I was with the first organization. We were at a crossroads. We didn't have any faith or joy in using the accounting systems and the medical record systems that we were using, and we looking in the marketplace for something better. And we searched high and low. Long-term post-acute care is a lot different than acute care. Acute care, you have your Epics and your Cerners, multi-hundreds of millions of dollars for systems. Long-term care is the redheaded stepchild. We have less budgets, we have less money, and the software vendors will spend less in developing less robust systems. So I had a stupid idea one day, and I went to the CEO, my boss at the time, and I said, we know the business process. We know how to develop something that would be used by the industry. You know, and through our mutual friends, one of his friends' son was a software developer at Booz Allen, finishing up a project, and said, I think that we can create a software company and develop a financial and clinical application just for the long-term care industry and sweep it by storm. Can you support me in this? And he says, well, this would require a board decision. We're a non-for-profit. We can't be developing a for-profit business, but maybe we should think about it. Why don't you come together with a business plan? So I went to this programmer. We sat down. We developed a business plan. We developed a process. We sold it to the board. This board gave us seed money for 3 years and said, go what you need to do, figure it out, and see if it works. They were the partner that we had was located upstate New York in a little town called Saratoga Springs. And it was about 3.5, 4-hour drive or train ride from New York City where I was. So we ended up creating the company. He was the CTO, I was the CEO. We hired a team of developers. At that time, we were using XAML, we were using SQL Server, we were using .NET and everything to develop this application. We wrote all the stories, we wrote all the use cases. In about 1.5 years, we had a viable product that we started using at the organization that I was at. It was proven that it was robust enough. It was proven that it was able to be used. So we hired a couple of salespeople and we went around New York State to try to sell this product. We sold it to 1, we sold it to 2, we sold it to 3, and we said, this is going to be a good business here. And then my partner said, I'm not going to make $1 million in a year or two, so I'm leaving. So I had a decision to make whether or not to keep the team that's up there intact and continue the business going, or since we were young enough with less impact, say it was a great experiment and let's just close it down and drop shop. And my CEO at the time talked to the board and said, I think you need to take the train or drive up there and tell them we're going to shut the business down and we're going to, it was a good try. Mm-hmm. So I took the train up, sat down with the team, had a heart-to-heart with everybody, and I said, listen, we're 99% there. We're being told to shut it down. They're going to stop funding the rest of the organization. We're not yet cash flow positive. So I'm up here to terminate this organization. The next 2 hours, the team says, we will rally behind you. We will continue to develop this application. We believe in this solution. We believe in this company, and we believe in this. And together, I went back down to New York to my CEO and says, no, we're not closing it. You're going to give me another year to make this work.
Wow.
And we did. I mean, I had a developer that had come from TV Guide Online, which one of his latest jobs there was to optimize queries for search results in 3 nanoseconds faster than it was last week to make the experience better for the users. I remember one time where we were using a company called First Data Bank to help the doctor's ordering piece, to when a doctor places an order, we'll be able to know that this drug is prescribed in these particular doses and this type of way so that it interacts with our software and we didn't have to build that database behind it. We're ready to release that product. He calls me up and says, well, First Data Bank is coming up with a new version. As of next week, they'll be on version 3. We're on version 2. Version 2 is not compatible with 3. I know we're ready to launch. What are we going to do? So I said, how long do you think it'll take to retool that? Well, 2 or 3 weeks. It's like, well, I can buy that with the business. I could say we're going to be 2 or 3 weeks later for late on the launch. And that was Friday afternoon. Monday morning, he spent all weekend recoding, redoing everything. He said, okay, it works with the new version. Thank you very much. That was the team that I had. A very small team, less than 10 people, but we ended up growing that business to 35, 40 customers within about three years.
That's amazing. Were you guys profitable?
We were break even at the very end, and after 3 or 4 years, the board felt that it was not appropriate to have this kind of business as part of this not-for-profit healthcare. So they said, it's time to cash out, it's time to sell it. So we ended up selling it to one of the competitors in the New York City area, not making a whole lot of money, but breaking even, walking away. And that product ended up coming with a package that sold it to another company, who sold it to another company. So it somewhat lives on a little bit, but it was a great experience, and it was a great team building opportunity for that process.
It's amazing, David. And having what you did is you actually became an entrepreneur, and you ran a startup that was successful because you sold, regardless of the money that you made or did not make. Having the determination, the stamina, the leadership, your leadership skills were completed by that experience. Those years at the forefront of something that you don't know if it's going to fail or succeed, that's what makes or breaks a leader.
Right, and that's really, I felt good about building a team to the point where we can create a viable business. I felt very, very important that even though we're a tiny company, we're 10 employees, we should have a benefit plan that rivals big companies. We should have a leave plan. We should have medical insurance. We should have a profit sharing plan. We wanted to make sure that we did this to the way that treat the employees the way they're treating us. The developer team, I went up there once and said, what will make you guys happy? What will make us happy is to have GarageBand in the office. And when we bought GarageBand for the few $100s that it was, they'd work all day long. At 4 or 5 o'clock, they would take a break for dinner and jam and make some music, and then they'd stay in the office for another 3 or 4 hours because they were having fun. And
that's amazing.
It's morale boosting and the best employee development team building tool that I could find.
Amazing. And a couple of $100. I mean, you're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars of productivity just because somebody's but that's so you learn how to build culture. That's my point, right? Like, if somebody will ask me, with the experience that I have now after many years in business, if they were, not that I have an MBA, by the way, but if they would ask me, I will give you $100,000 to make an MBA, or I will give you $100,000 to start a small business, which one would you choose? I will always start a small business.
All right.
If you want to be an entrepreneur. Because the MBA for me will be great if I want to go into Wall Street and work on economics. You have to have an MBA for that. But for actually becoming a business leader, I think the startup experience is going to teach you a lot, way more than anything else.
Right. Two other areas that have really helped me at that during that time, and then for the 12 years that I've been at this organization, there's a number of leadership books that I had read a number of years ago when I went through leadership training, department training, most of them by Ken Blanchard, a book called Raving Fans. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. Gung Ho, all about, you're not, when you deal with customers, you always want to give them 1% more or 10% more than they're expecting. That way, if you happen to fall down and you happen to miss up on one thing, they'll overlook that because they're getting 10% more than they expected in return all of the other times. And I buy these books for every one of my staff members, every place I've worked. These were the first day that they start. Here are the books. They're about a 2-hour read each. They're little fables that have really stories around them. But I preach that across all of my reports and all of my teams. The other thing that's really important to me is, and I've read a number of books on there, but it's more about execution, is I believe in servant leadership. I believe my role is to be a servant to my team so they can do their job, and our team's job is to make the employees do their job better so that we can serve the patients and residents that we serve. So I fully believe in that, and I think that's helped me guide how I've moved forward in my career.
Servant leadership. And you know who invented that term? Jesus Christ. He was the first servant leader. He came to serve being a leader. In fact, I have a book there that is called Servant Leadership, and it's all based on the Bible. When I read that, well, I haven't read it, but when I saw the portrait on the back of the book, I'm like, It's true, right? Like, if you are not thinking about serving others in a position of leadership, David, you will never become a good leader.
Exactly.
You're gonna make a great enforcer. You can make fear be your guide, but that only lasts for so long until people start quitting.
Exactly.
But
That's why
as a leader, people will actually appreciate you, and they will actually get inspired to accomplish the goals, not forced to accomplish them.
Exactly. And that's how you build teams, and team building that's what it's all about within the IT department, within the organization, everything. It's about building the right teams and how people know what their role is in those teams to make you successful.
David, can you repeat the book series that you recommend? Because I love culture, and my whole life is around building a better culture.
So,
The
author is Ken Blanchard, and the three books that I've handed out to everybody. One is called Raving Fans, and the second one is called Gung Ho, and the third one is Well Done.
Well done, fantastic. You know, the one book that I read and I used a lot to base my culture in my business is called Delivering Happiness, by the founder of Zappos shoes.
Uh-huh.
Excellent book. I don't know if you read it, but that book.
It's on my list now.
Yeah, you have. Unfortunately, this gentleman passed away already, but he built $1 billion company with that culture. And in fact, you know that if you go to Las Vegas, where they are headquartered, you can go in and ask for a tour, and they will actually give you a tour of their business.
That's great.
Amazing. David, what's in the future for you? What's in the horizon? What do you want to accomplish next?
Well, one of the, I guess, lucky, but you create your own luck and you create your own path. So one of the other byproducts of COVID here is we took care of a very wealthy couple, husband and wife. The husband ended up with early onset dementia in the community, and our organization helped them in our home care agency. We helped them in our managed care program. We brought him into the nursing home, and we took care of him in the nursing home, and he passed away in the middle of COVID. There was nothing we could do. We gave the family the best amount of care that we possibly did. His wife was so thankful, the kind of compassion that every department gave to her and him and the family. And they have the means and the wealth to do that. So they made a sizable donation to our not-for-profit organization with the stipulation that it be only used for technology.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So he was, his name was Gus Hauser. His claim to fame is he was one of the founders of Warner Communications, which turned into Time Warner. He invented the concept of cable TV. He created channels like VH1 and Nickelodeon.
Oh, wow.
His wife is not very, there's no problem on his wife's side. His wife, Rita Hauser, is one of the first women graduates of Harvard Law School. She went on to serve the United Nations, Henry Kissinger, Richard Nixon, and is a very, very intelligent, smart woman. So she decided that it was important for her legacy is to help us with technology. So for the last 2 or 3 years, I've been the enviable position of being a tech leader, not worrying about pennies in the budget, but worrying about worthwhile projects to implement. And we created a committee, and we said, we're using this money as if it's our own. We're going to safeguard it and only use it the way we want it. We're going to start with pilot projects, make sure something's successful before we move out to the organization, with 3 goals. We're going to create a better resident experience. We're going to create a better staff experience, and we're going to create some financial efficiencies. So for the last 3 years, we've been looking for, selecting, and implementing technology projects that will help. For one good example, a staff member said, sometimes it's very difficult for us nurses to take blood from elderly people because the skin is very supple, it's very difficult to find the veins. So we found a very inexpensive near-infrared sensor that would be shining on the arm, and we'll be able to visualize where the veins are, so it'll be easier for them to take their blood. We've not had to send anyone out to the hospital to get blood taken since we've implemented that $5,000 project.
And that's thanks to that foundation. Thanks to
We
the
would have never been able to afford something like that if it wasn't for this foundation and this donation.
David, what a beautiful story. Wow, I have shivers all over my body. What a
There's probably
what a great story.
there's been a dozen other projects similar to that we've undertaken. We've learned a lot about project management. We hired a RN clinical project manager to help shepherd a lot of these projects to make sure they're adopted. The last thing we wanted to do was buy technology, put it up on the floors and not have people use it because they weren't trained or they didn't feel comfortable with it. And we've been on the last 2 or 3 years at a bunch of national conferences. One of the large healthcare IT HIMSS, the Healthcare Information Management System Society conference with 40,000 attendees. We were invited to speak at that about our transformation journeys. Local and national other conferences we've been at to really spread the word. We don't want to keep it a secret that these systems and these technologies help the organizations. We want to make sure everyone knows about them so that we can help promote them across the continuum.
So you realize that the money is not only benefiting your organization, but it's actually making waves in the whole system.
Exactly.
Isn't that amazing?
I'll give you a great example of this, Rita Hauser's generosity. You're familiar with Lincoln Center in New York City, where they have a lot of high-end musical venues where they can have concerts.
Yeah.
She felt that the masses within New York City, all the regular people, couldn't afford to attend concerts inside Lincoln Center. So last year, she built a huge TV wall across the entire side of the building so that anyone in the neighborhood can watch what's going on inside if they couldn't afford to buy a ticket.
That is amazing.
That's the kind of giving back that she gives to organizations that she feels are worthy of her graces.
And we go back to servant leadership, isn't it?
That's exactly right.
She's serving her community with the blessing that the Lord gave her. Incredible. I love it when everybody wins, David.
Yes.
When everybody wins, the notion that somebody needs to lose for me to win is a loser's mentality.
Right. No,
it doesn't exist. Right?
Hold up everybody and to make sure that everyone has the best opportunity to succeed. So I'm probably 5, 6, 7 years away from retirement. As much as I don't know what that's going to be. I don't know what it's not to wake up at 5 a.m. and come to work. So for the next 5 years is to make sure that this money and our organization stewards that money as best as we can, and develop a transition plan so my team can continue the good work that I've been leading at this organization for the future.
It's beautiful, David. Thank you so much. We've been talking for more than 40 minutes, I think now. So I promised you was going to be less than 45, so I know you're a busy executive. I'm going to ask you one last question before we finish the podcast. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write on it?
That's interesting. Lots of different perspectives on this. Learn from your elders. Learn from the seniors in your life. They are a wealth of information, and learn from them.
That's beautiful. And I hope that Western society will embrace that more, because you and I have gray hair already. I have a white beard. And it's only through the passing of the decades that you really build wisdom, because you have failed so much and you also have some type of success, and you know what works, what doesn't work. For example, the whole concept of servant leadership. I had to learn that the wrong way. I was a rude, very bad leader that was enforcing everything through fear, until I realized that didn't work. It didn't work for me. It didn't work for my employees. It was a horrible mistake because I didn't know any better. And then I started learning how to become a better leader. I actually had to go to a leadership course for tech people, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just a programmer that put a hat on as an entrepreneur, but I didn't know what I was doing. So
somehow, in early in my career, someone gave me the best advice. Put yourself in the shoes of the people that you're working with and look at it from their perspective. And I do that all the time, and I try to teach others to do that, because then you can have your empathy and you can really feel for the other perspectives. It's not just your perspective.
It's true, David. And also listening to the people that have been there and done that, your elders. they are a wealth of information, exactly what you said, right?
I love going. I help serve breakfast every Monday morning at one of the floors. I love going up there, talking with the residents. How's your weekend go? About their history and their lives. It really helps me ground myself and say, this is the reason why we're here. We're not for the bits and bytes. We're not here for the systems. It's really, this is their home. This is where they live. We want to make this as the most comfortable and the best place for them to live.
Beautiful. David, thank you so much. If people like to ask questions or they want to find you online, are you on LinkedIn? Where can they find you?
The best places to find me is LinkedIn. I don't really use most of the other platforms, but I'm on LinkedIn. All my bio and speaking engagements and other postings are all there.
Fantastic, David. God bless you. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of the week. Thank you for your time, David.
Thank you, David. It's a good pleasure talking with you.
Blessings.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leaders in Tech podcast. Check in next week to keep learning how to use technology and leadership to change the game. See you next time.